on our eternal hope, and in light of Joy's passing, because it truly is, as Dylan said, a time of joy for those who know where we're headed, and that's to the paradise that awaits us. And from the oldest to the youngest, that truth has to remain known to us. I want to ask my daughter Phoebe to come and share her thoughts. And then also I'm going to ask her to read a poem that Joy wrote for North Shore Fellowship not too long before she passed. So Phoebe, come on up, sweetheart.
Joy was one of the kindest and sweetest people I've ever met. She was always so nice, and I never heard a mean word come out of her mouth. She really had a lot of joy in her heart. She was smiling and laughing, and she wanted and was a part of so many things. Joy was one of my closest friends, and I'm sure a lot of people could say that. She was someone who I could tell my thoughts and secrets to, and she would listen with that sweet smile on her face that I'll never forget. Me and my sister loved her so much. She would come to our recitals and shows, and she gave us gifts on her birthday, but most importantly, she was there as a friend. Every Sunday at church, I would tell her about my week, and she would tell me about hers. Then she'd come over our house between services with her slippers, her Bible, and her flip phone. And we'd play games and talk and read and play music. It was great to spend time with her. When she passed away, I was shocked and devastated. I knew she was sick, but I didn't know she was dying. It seemed like a nightmare. I thought to myself, is she really gone? I never got to say goodbye. But it's not the last conversation you have with the person that counts. It's the lifelong memories. But she would have wanted this to be a celebration. She fought the good fight, and now she's with Jesus in eternity.
Amen. So Joy had just so many wonderful things about her. And I think her biggest fault, though, was she thought too highly of me. And so please keep that in mind. It's a very blush-worthy poem, but it's really about what God did and really everything that God did to bring this church about. She wrote it, and I really don't think it would be, it would honor her to not read it. It was for you guys. It's for North Shore Fellowship, so I asked Phoebe to read it.
Planting a church, what does it mean? Sowing the garden, getting fresh beans. Sounds so silly, but what is it then? Be patient now, while I put thought to pen. We'll start at the beginning. Pastor has been called. Relocate, start from scratch. His life's been overhauled. Obeying God's call, Bible in his hand, goes out to find a place where church can safely land. Bravely knocking on all doors, turned away at most. They don't know who they're dealing with. He's got the Holy Ghost. Perseverance paid off. Answers became yes. Now he's found some places, praying God will bless. Close friends draw near. We want to form a team. With love for God and love for him, how right this all does seem. Meeting with core families, discussing all their needs. Wheels are set in motion, now pastor can proceed. Informal baby steps, as weekly as we gather, showing them new ways, the style of church he'd rather. Slowly coming together, circles become rows, jobs become serving, pastor smiles, he knows. God is leading us forward in planning and hard work. People become congregation. Careful, Satan tries to lurk. Must be watchful, must be careful. Guard our hearts and minds. Obstacles to get past and doubts that we may find. But as we all continue, we look to God in prayer. Please keep us on your path, Lord, each and every day. For you are who we trust. You are our guiding light. We want to do this your way, so it will turn out right. A new church formed for you, God, must be planted to begin. Like a seed, it starts growing. Let all the new faces in. North Shore Fellowship is our name, home to many now. We worship and learn together, and to you, Jesus, we bow. Our pastor, shepherd, in all this, has led us into being. We are his sheep. He cares for us, shows us God's ways are so free. Raphael is so anointed. He knows just how to teach. He shares God's word so powerfully. So many he will reach. His messages are amazing. He speaks straight from his heart. We learn so much and feel God's love. I'm so thankful to be a part. Now another big move, but keeping close the first. God, you've opened many doors for us. We're so humbled and excited we could burst. Stepping out in faith, we're in the palm of your hand. So peaceful we all feel, trusting this is your plan. Our church for God's glory, Raphael's vision and filling the need. We remain committed and faithful. Watch what happens to God's seed. Together, close friends and new friends, become church family now, to fellowship, serve, and worship, and to this, to God we vow. With what we have and who we have, we'll go forward and do our best, then putting all our confidence and trust in God who will do the rest. Joy.
Good job. Thank you, sweetheart. I'd like to call Cayley up, and Cayley Bazant, leading the women's group in a very, very timely women's group study, and she'll tell you about that in just a second. So, Cayley, come on up, and
I'm just going to read, so I hope to look up at you on occasion. I'm blessed to stand before you to celebrate and honor the life of Joy Vanderhoof and the incredible relationship she has with Jesus. The ways that God worked in Joy's life and in her passing clearly show us God's character of love and mercy, and ultimately remind us of his promise in Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm, plans to give you a hope and a future. I had the privilege of calling Joy my friend. In her last days, we had the intimacy of studying together a book by Mary Neal called 7 Lessons from Heaven. Mary is a doctor who describes her near-death experience and her encounter with God and heaven. We did not know that the road to heaven that we were studying and discussing was imminent for Joy. Through this study, God prepared her and us for her passing to glory. Did you know there is not even a word for coincidence in Hebrew? The only equivalent is mikra, meaning happening of God. In the spring, I received this book from a dear friend. I was immediately prompted by the Holy Spirit to study this book with the North Shore Peninsula Women's Group. Mary Neal says that reading this book is an act of courage. It shows that you want to see beyond the horizon of your life. Joy was courageous. What a provision from the Lord to be able to walk the road to heaven with Joy without even knowing it. Joy was prepared to meet her Lord. According to Mary Neal, joy is a state of being that is unshakable by trials or circumstances. It is based on a trust that God says what he means and that his promises are true. Joy had that joy. She lived through hard circumstances, including losing her husband John and mother in close proximity. Joy gave her testimony to our women's group last spring. She said that Jesus found her in her despair and brought her to peace. She lived in joy and she passed into eternity with eternal joy. God is so tender and merciful and intentional that in the last days he gave Joy a virtual roadmap of the journey to heaven through Mary Neal's experience. Our God always offers comfort. He gave us comfort in knowledge and also his peace that passes understanding. Reading this book together allows me to stand before you knowing that joy is in heaven, which Revelation 21:4 describes as a place where there is no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. Death is not to be feared because death is not the end. It is a threshold where we leave our physical selves behind and walk into eternity. Mary Neal reminds us that Jesus only asked 3 things of us: honor God, believe in Christ, and love one another. Joy did all those things: honored, believed, and loved. Let's honor God and Joy by doing those same things in our lives. Today is an exuberant day for Joy. She left all pain and suffering and walked along a golden, brightly lit path with her husband John to the mansion Christ promised to her. Helen Keller said, "Death is no more than passing from one room to another." But Keller says, "There is a difference for me. In that room, I can see." I think this is spiritually true for all of us. We will see everything clearly. Let's rejoice. Joy can now see clearly. Please pray with me. Lord, even while we grieve the loss of our dear friend, we celebrate her, knowing that she has found full joy in your love. Please open our eyes and hearts to all the ways that you have and you are and you will work in our lives and the lives of others. Amen.
Thanks, Cayley. Awesome. So, guys, I just want to share a few scriptures and kind of make sense of this for all of us, that, we're grieving, and this is not uncommon. Many of us have lost close loved ones, sometimes parents, sometimes children, sometimes brothers, sisters, close friends. And I've been comforted by a verse in John 16:22 this week. And I read this as he's speaking to his apostles about him leaving. He says, "So with you, now is your time of grief," Jesus says, "but I will see you again, and you will rejoice, and no one will take away our joy." I want to tell you something. This is a word directly from the lips of Jesus, so you can believe this. And he went on to die, as you know, and he came back again, and he ascended. But the point here is that it doesn't end in sadness. It doesn't end in grief. Whatever your journey or your loved one's journey encompasses, the end is not deep, eternal sadness. For those who call upon the name of the Lord Jesus, it's eternal bliss. It's paradise. Now, Joy's journey, you've heard it. She's an incredible lady. And you say that every time someone dies, they were a good woman, they were a good man. But listen, this time it means something very special, something spectacular for those of you that know her. I've been a close friend of hers for many years, at least 7 or 8 years. And she was just always the model congregant at every Bible study, at every event, sitting in the front row, very, very enthusiastic, immeasurably encouraging, as you saw in that embarrassing poem that she wrote. But consistent as a participant, a volunteer, a servant, a giver, an encourager. And she was there when we breathed the first words about starting this church, even before it had a name. And even in her darkness that she came out of when she lost her husband and lost her mom and had no siblings, no children, no close relatives, living alone, we saw her come out of this deep darkness where she could barely stand from the grief she was feeling to the place where she was holding others up for the incredible amount of contagious joy that she had, all because of believing upon the words of Jesus and walking in them through the Holy Spirit every day. Last Sunday, I preached this service, and then I went and preached at the Monmouth County Community Church in Middletown at 11:15. And lo and behold, Joy came to both. She came to this one, and she came to that one. And then Allie and I were singing at an event in Manhattan, in Lower Manhattan, the Oppose Anti-Semitism event, big event. And there she was again, Monica and Joy, there in the hot sun, worrying about if I'm getting enough hydration. And believe me, she's like a Jewish mother for someone who's not Jewish. And then she went home, wrote an incredible note about how joyful and how peaceful she is to feel the love of serving together with us, just overflowing. That's the kind of person she was. And the next day, she had severe stomach pain, and I'll just walk it through. She had stomach pain. They couldn't figure it out. She was in the hospital for 2 days of testing, including CAT scans. They couldn't figure it out. Monica was with her during the duration, just praying and hoping that they'll find out what this stomach problem was. I prayed for her, anointed her with oil on Wednesday. Came home, they said they're going to do emergency surgery because they see some type of blockage. They went in, and before she went in, she called me and said, "Am I going to be okay?" And I said, "Trust in the Lord, be in His peace. They need to do this." And then she went to surgery. I told her I'd be there when she woke up, so got up at 5 a.m., drove to the hospital in Somerville, and when I got there, she was just waking up from anesthesia. Groggy, intubated, which means she had a tube down her throat. She couldn't really talk. But I asked her if she was in pain. Yes. I asked her if she still had sickness. Feeling, yes. She's really not doing well. She has the monitor up with all her vitals, heart rate, blood pressure, all the vitals, and erratic numbers going up and down. The doctor took me aside and asked me who I was. I told her a pastor, close friend, and probably her closest confidant at the time. Nobody else was in the room. And he said, "I want you to know this is very serious." I said, "Okay." He said, "She's in critical condition." I said, "Okay. Likely she doesn't come out of this." And it was a real surprise to me because she wasn't sick on Sunday night and she felt stomach pain the next day. And he said, there's no advance directive. Would you want her to be resuscitated? Will you make that call? I said, of course. If, in the case, her heart stops and they have to code blue and code her and bring her back, of course. And he goes, okay. So I was there a couple hours. I was talking on the phone with Allie. I was down the hall, and we both heard code blue, I see you. And I ran down the hall, and it was her room. And her heart had stopped. And so they're doing CPR, and they do it with a whole team and trying to get the heart to get going, and it did. And I was so relieved. And then the doctor, head of the team, there was about 12 people on that team, took me aside and said, she barely survived that, and her body suffered a lot of damage. What should we do if it happens again? I said, by all means, whatever you have to do it. And he said, okay. And so 20 minutes later, it happened again. The team, code blue, resuscitating her. And, it's a very violent thing. It takes its toll on ribs and vitals and organs and blood. And they got the heart to start again. And he said, listen, she barely survived that. She won't survive another one. He said, my professional opinion is that we don't do that again. It will kill her. I said, I'm going to pray. I stepped out of the room. And I came in and I said, listen, I'm going to trust and take your professional opinion, and I'm going to go before the Lord with my friend Joy and ask God to heal her. And I sat on the bedside seat and grabbed her hand, and I prayed for healing, and I'm praying for restoration and strength and recovery and regeneration. I'm praying for a miracle. I'm praying that God will change the course of her physical condition and raise her up like we read about in Acts, like we read about through the Bible, and that she would rise up healthy. And I'm praying and praying. And my faith was put to the test. And the faith was, am I believing God? Am I listening to the Lord? So I said to God, if this is your time to take her, who am I to try to change that? And so if it's the time that you are deciding to take her into her eternal rest, I receive that, I trust that. But my job is to pray for her. And I realized that those numbers were going down and down and down. She was about to code again. And so I said to Joy, I said, this is the thing we talked about our whole lives. This is the moment where perhaps you're being brought into eternity. And I said, so I want to tell you, Joy, that if this is that time, that you'll just rest in the hands of Jesus and let him take you. And it was really at that moment that she just, in a very angelic, restful way, just kind of leaned to the side. And she didn't breathe her last because she was intubated, but her vital signs, including her heart rate, went down and down and down to 0. Monica walked in at that very moment. And she was peacefully overcome with the shalom of God. It was thick in the room. As much as we were grieving, she was experiencing the joy that awaits us all and that we read and talk and sing about every day. And friends, I want to just tell you that I wanted Joy to live and I wanted her to be healed. But God wanted her to enter into his rest. And just as Jacob wrestled with the angel in that Old Testament story, wrestling with the angel. Thank you. It was almost as if we were playing tug of war with Joy. God wanted her this way, we wanted her this way. And ultimately God won. And you know what, guys? Only God knows. We don't know why our loved ones die or are not healed when we pray ardently and intensely for them. We don't know why, but God knows. So we trust him and we trust his word. Isaiah 55, verses 8 and 9 says this. It says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heaven is higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than yours, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." Even Jesus had to submit to this truth. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he was asking God to relieve him of the impending suffering. But he said this in Luke 22, verse 42. Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. See, Jesus could have played a little tug of war with God there, but he didn't. He just completely submitted. And God had his way. And God did not take the cup of suffering away from Jesus. In fact, he allowed Jesus to go through it and to die on the cross. And the very next chapter, Jesus was able to say this to the thief that was being crucified next to him. Truly, Luke 23:43, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. He told his followers earlier, he said, don't let your heart be troubled. If you believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you, I go to prepare a place for you there. And later he says, if I go to prepare a place, I will go that where I go, you may also be. You see, he's gone on ahead of us, and he is preparing a place for us. Paul talks about that place later in the New Testament, in 1 Corinthians 2, verse 9, he says this, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, nor has it even entered into the heart of man. No human mind has conceived the things that God has prepared for those who love him. And think about what we just read. No eye has seen, no ear has heard. In other words, it's so incredible that nobody's even been able to hear or see it yet. The things that Jesus prepared for those who love him. And Joy loved art and music. And she would think about it and talk about it a lot. But just think about what she's seeing and hearing right now. Really, picture her face in heaven with this incredible paradise all around. What kind of bright smile would that be? I can't imagine. And think about what the human eye can see. We can see lots of beautiful sights and colors, but you know what, guys? We only see a slither of the visible spectrum. You see, we see 7 colors, right, and they're mixed in different ways, right in the middle of the visible spectrum. But the visible spectrum is part of a bigger spectrum, much of which is invisible, ultraviolet, or infrared. You know what that means? Is that we only see the colors between red and violet. But what about the colors infrared? We can't see them. What about the colors that are ultraviolet? Our eyes can't perceive them. But Joy's can. Wow. And what about the sounds? Our human ear can only hear certain frequencies, and the audio spectrum is just a small slither. There are subsonic notes that maybe whales can hear and beyond. There's ultrasonic pitches that maybe dogs can hear. I don't know. But there's so much music that you can't hear because you only have these little devices. Joy can hear them. The angels can sing them. And it's a beautiful thing that awaits us. And our lifespans, guys, are also just a slither. If I was able to get a timeline in front of you that stretched as far south as I could possibly reach, maybe beyond Florida, beyond South America, and as far north as I could possibly reach, maybe beyond the North Pole, and that was my timeline, right, of eternity. Our little lifespan is just a little slither. Whether it's, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60, 60, 110 years, is this. And we want to live, 100 years instead of 71 years. It's not that big a deal in that timeline, because that eternal timeline is where God dwells. And yes, he's concerned about our days. He certainly is. But he's more concerned about where we spend our eternity. Where we spend our eternity. Jesus died so that we can live, and that's the basis of our faith. It's the basis of Joy's faith. I've been reading C.S. Lewis lately, excerpts from his book, Grief Observed. C.S. Lewis was an incredible writer, lived in England. He didn't marry until much later in life, and he married a woman named Joy, who really captured his heart. An American writer captured his heart. He head over heels in love, and later in life, enjoying the bliss of being in love and being married. And then Joy got cancer and slowly died right in front of him. And during that time, he wrestled with this. It seemed mean-spirited of God. He asked what people might consider disrespectful questions about God's sovereignty and God's benevolence. And he walked it through in a very real, literal sense. And he came to terms with God. And some of the things that he wrote, he says, far greater the love, the greater the grief. And the stronger the faith, the more savagely Satan will storm its fortress. If you love a lot, you're going to grieve a lot. And if you have a solid faith, you are going to be direct attack from the enemy. But just listen to what he writes when he's watching her suffer. If only I could bear it, or the worst of it, or any of it instead of her. In other words, if I could be suffering instead of her. But one can't tell how serious that bit is, for nothing is staked on it. If it suddenly became a real possibility, then, for the first time, we should discover how seriously we had meant it. But it's never allowed. You're never allowed to take someone else's suffering. I couldn't get into the bed and have Joy watch me suffer. However, it is allowed to one. It's Jesus. We are told, and I find I can now believe again, that he has done vicariously whatever can be done. And he replies to our babble, which is our nonsensical thought. You cannot, and you dare not, but I could, and I dared. In other words, Jesus was the only one who was able to take our place in sin and death. And he did. And he did. Jesus' death on the cross means Joy's eternal life. If Jesus hadn't died on the cross, then Joy would be stuck in her sins, just like the rest of us. But the beautiful thing about salvation is that Jesus died so that we could live. The cross. It happened nearly 2,000 years ago, but it made every bit of difference on Thursday morning. If Jesus hadn't died, Joy could not live, but because he did, she can. And he died so that you could live also, if you accept and believe. And so, folks, if there's a lesson in all of this, it's to fix our eyes, as Hebrews 12:2 says, fix our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and the perfecter of our faith, for the joy set before him endured the cross. Before we take communion, I asked Monica to share a moment of communion that she had with Joy. Would you just go ahead and share it with us?
I will give you a little context first. On Tuesday, I had to beg Joy to let me visit her. She didn't want any visitors at that time. She wanted to be alone. But I begged her and I told her I'd bring some art supplies. And that piqued her interest a little bit. So I brought some art supplies, and she wasn't really into painting, but I painted for her. I knew she loved watching someone paint. And I stopped at the craft store and picked up a cross-shaped wall hanging with nothing on it. And the day before, like Raphael said, we had been to New York City, so I painted a little scene of the New York skyline, which I knew she loved. She had spent a lot of time there with her husband. And on the bottom of the cross, I painted the Jersey Shore. She loved, of course, being here near the Jersey Shore, and loved the Tuesday night Bible studies on the beach, loved them. And on the crossbar of the cross, I wrote from Proverbs, there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother, and she knew that was Jesus. I wanted to say there's a friend who sticks closer than a sister, but she wouldn't let me, so I left it. There's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Wednesday, she was a little weaker. When I got to the hospital, Raphael was there. We painted her foam cups that she drinks water from. And I painted some pretty scenes, and Raphael painted one also. I also brought her a bottle of water because I know she loves to hold on to her bottle of water. So she had a bottle of water at her side. But all day long, she drank from the foam cup that Raphael painted. As the hours passed, I began to feel she needed more and more care. It was very natural, but very slowly, before I knew it, I was caring for her like a mother to a child. Her skin felt cold, but she herself felt really, really hot. So I was wiping her forehead and her neck and her arms. She asked me to wipe her back. At that moment of wiping her back, I was in front of her. She was kind of in my arms. She rested her head on my shoulder. I was wiping her down. And she said to me, "You're a good nurse, Monica." And I told her,
It was my training 40 years ago. That was my first career. They taught us how to care. But it wasn't really that. I know now it was the Holy Spirit. It was God's hands. I was being God's hands and arms. I was caring for her like Sar Shalom says, hold me close, like a loving father with a child in his hands. It's exactly what Joy got. And so I just want to encourage you that she got the most tender, loving care in her final moments. And shortly after that, I asked the nurse if we could, in her room, the instructions were advance her diet. She was only on liquids. I was, by that point, spoon feeding her tiny bits of Jell-O. She didn't want it. I was giving her the straw so she could drink some fluids out of that cup with Raphael's name on it. And then we advanced to saltines. We each had a bottle of water in our hand. And when I went to break the saltine and give her a teeny tiny piece, I felt the Spirit of God say, communion. And I said to Joy, we're going to have communion right now. And she said, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu. And I said, blessed are you, God, King of the universe. And we remembered him, and we remembered his sacrifice on the cross, and we remembered that he's with us and he's with her. We didn't know how grave the situation was at that time. But we had communion there in the hospital bed with a tiny bit of saltine and a sip of water from the plastic bottle. Shortly after that, I went to the nurse's station. I said, I think she needs oxygen. They came in, they gave her oxygen. Before I knew it, 12 people were at her bedside. The emergency had begun. They took her down to ICU. By that time, 2 other friends had come to visit. We're in the ICU waiting room. We really didn't get to see her too much. The doctor came into the ICU waiting room, told us she needs emergency surgery. I asked, can you please give her this cross, the one that says, there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. And they set it up on the wall right in front of her where she could see it. I was grateful for that. I went in, they let us go in to see her, and when I did, she could barely speak. She had a nasogastric tube, all kinds of things. And she pointed as best she could to that cross. And I said, yes, Joy, he's sticking closer than a brother. He knows what you're suffering. He's suffered on earth, and he's with you. He gets you. He's got you, Joy. And we prayed, and the nurse prayed with us. And I said, you're not alone, Joy. He's with you. He's sticking closer than a brother. And you won't be alone when you wake up. And they rushed me out of there so they could rush her to surgery. And when she got to the elevator, the 3 friends and I were standing there. And as sick as she was, she did this. She blew us all kisses. And that's the last time I saw her awake and alert. But she knew God was with her, and she had communion, and she remembered.